Welcome back to DL Hughley Uncut. Our first guest is the Attorney General for Nevada. Please welcome the Honorable Aaron Ford. Honorable.
I don't know if we can say honorable.
Well,
I don't know. I mean, that's the best.
It was on the prompter. I had to say it.
It's good to see you, Aaron. How are you?
I'm great, man. Great to see you, too.
Can I ask you an honest question? Did you all in the Nevada commit voter fraud?
No, sir. No, sir. There's widespread voter fraud out here. And when it happens, I prosecute it. You can rest assured.
Ooh.
Then why is that term being bantered about so much?
Because you got folks out there who are engaging in hyperbole and hysteria, trying to undermine the integrity of our elections. I leave that to them. My job is to protect the lawful process, to ensure that every legal vote that has been cast is counted, and I will continue doing that.
Do you think that the allegations are spurious? Because I know to date that several of his allegations, his cases have been thrown out. What would be the basis? Like, okay, first off, I need to know what voter fraud is. What is voter fraud? What would that imply? What does that entail?
Well, it's great. That's a great question. Yesterday, our Secretary of State, who, by the way, is a Republican, who is the one who oversees all of our elections here, put out a statement talking about that exact issue. There is no single definition for voter fraud.
Wow.
It could include people who vote and they shouldn't vote because they're not residents or because they are not citizens. It could include people who forward signatures on ballots, and it can include all sorts of things. And it doesn't include a lot of stuff as well that some people want to complain about, which may just be process issues and things of that sort.
Right.
A lot of what we're hearing right now is just that. We're hearing it. We're not seeing actual complaints being filed with evidence that we can look into. I prosecute voter fraud. I'm prosecuting one right now. It happens very, very few times. And certainly not at a level where it's going to overturn a national election like this. But when it does happen, we take it seriously here and I prosecute.
So there are allegations that people voted and that it died, or there had been ballots burned, or that people saw weren't allowed to, observers weren't allowed to see the process. And I think that people hear those terms and they sound sinister. Like people don't realize, like, if you go to a restaurant, it's a certain amount of bullshit in your food. It's like it's bad things that happen in that process that are legal, that are not against the law. Why are we having these arguments if there isn't the voter fraud that he's alleging, particularly in your state too? Why are we doing this right now?
Yeah, well, because they don't like the outcome of this election. You will know where they are challenging it. And incidentally, it's a lot of places where there's a large minority population.
Where? No, stop it.
Really?
You mean they didn't challenge Montana's results at all?
Right here in our state even, they're not challenging the 15 of the 17 counties where they lean Republican, for example. They're challenging right here in Clark County.
Sure.
Where there's a large Democratic population that has a large community, of people of color. And they're doing it in Philadelphia. They're challenging results in Detroit. They're talking bad about Atlanta. That's not by accident. That's by design. And some of the stuff that they put out there, it isn't even vetted. And this is probably one of the reasons why they haven't submitted to me an actual complaint for review, because I would spot some of this nonsense right out the bat. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that they said was that they found a list of 3,000 folks, or maybe they had a list of 3,000 folks who didn't live in our state anymore, but who had voted. And you take a look at that list, and it sounds ominous, right? But
right, it does.
That, first thing you notice is that many of those addresses say APO, Air Force Post Office,
right.
Army Post.
Right.
These are military who have the right to vote under these circumstances. And in fact, our military members here in our state have called them out on that nonsense. They are grasping at straws, and as I've said before, have no leg to stand on. That's why I beat them in court 4 times. Over the course of this election, and if they file another complaint that doesn't have any evidence, we're going to win that one too.
Well, Attorney General Ford, here's the thing: you raised a point, and I wanted to pick up on it. Joe Biden didn't win Nevada. He won Clark County. He won the largest. He didn't win Michigan. He won Detroit. So there is a disconnect between country and city. Like there really is. and they're just in this particular election, they'll show me a map, and it'll be a little bit of blue and a lot of red, and all that means is that apparently a lot of white people got room. But why is there such a disconnect between the way we vote and the way that those votes are processed? Because I know he jumped out to an early lead because the rural voters or the same day voters, they got their votes ballots processed earlier, right?
Yeah.
And so that caused a lot of confusion.
Yeah, well, it's different in almost every state, right? I think what you saw in Ohio, for example, is that they began processing a certain type of ballot that made it look like Biden was in the lead, and then they went to a different type of ballot,
Right.
which ultimately gave the election in that state to Mr. Trump. And here we started, we passed the law. The legislature passed a law that allowed our people to start counting votes 15 days before, because it was going to be a predominantly by mail voting process. And so we have counted those, and as we continue to count those, they continue to come in, and they happen to be skewing in favor of Mr. Biden, and that's why the
But why do you think that is? Why are they skewing in favor of him?
So listen, I'm gonna take off my AG hat. And
Right.
I'm
Put on
gonna,
your Kappa hat.
Oops.
Yeah.
Look, we'll talk a little bit from a demographic perspective. I'm a black man, married to a black woman,
Right.
who's raised 3 black sons and a black nephew.
A lot of that going around. Right now.
And let me tell you this. As a black man in that circumstance, I breathed a sigh of relief knowing that my wife didn't have to worry about my sons taking out the trash after dusk or jogging in our neighborhood without wondering if the man on high has said something to put their lives in jeopardy. And I think that resonates with a lot of folks. I have said since the beginning, since this man was a candidate, that he was an existential threat to so many people here. He came out the box calling Mexicans rapists.
Right.
Mexican immigrants and Mexican descendants are fighting for their lives. That's existential. You know, he then said that a woman could be grabbed wherever he wanted to grab her. A woman is fighting for her right to exist. You know, after he was elected, he said Muslims can't fly.
Yep.
Muslims fighting for their existence. You know, and then you come here to our borders for asylum. He says, I'm gonna take your babies. Asylum seekers are fighting for their existence. You know, he's undercutting environmental regulations. Our right to breathe, literally, we're fighting for existence. Today he was in court fighting, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act during a pandemic. We are literally fighting for our existence, not to mention, obviously, the famous words of there are good people on both sides. If you look like me, or if you're one of our Jewish brothers and sisters, you're fighting for your existence. And that's what's going on. And I think a lot of people understood, felt that, and voted accordingly.
But 71 million people didn't. 71 million people agree with it. It says a lot about a country that when they voted in 2016, some of the very people that set that out are voted against him, voted for him.
Yeah. Listen, if I were a single issue voter, it would be based on what I just described.
Right.
My right to exist.
Right.
And my kids' right to exist. My son, who's 15, has a good friend who is not black. He's white, and he supports Trump.
Right.
And my son said, how could he do that? Why is he doing that? He's lost some friends. But my son knows this guy. And he knows that this guy, in his heart of hearts, he doesn't believe he's racist. He just doesn't believe he's racist. And he doesn't believe that him voting for Trump or him supporting Trump means that he's a racist. And what I said to him was, and I'm not making excuses, I think I'm telling the truth on this issue, that some people are single issue voters, for example. Let's say you are completely and 100% pro-life, irrespective of any other issue out there. And it very well could be that because Joe Biden is pro-choice,
right,
and Mr. Trump claims to be pro-life, that's all they need to hear, right? And so we have to be able to understand that this divide right now, it exists, and what it means is that we have to communicate with one another. We can't run to our corners like in a boxing match, put on our gloves and be ready to fight all the time. Sometimes you got to fight, and I've been fighting for the last 2 years for our existence. But it is time, as Mr. Biden has said, for us to bring down the level of anxiety and anger and try to have a conversation to move our country forward.
But AG Ford, that starts with truth. That starts with a level of truth, but we've killed truth. You get to say things that are just patently false, and people buy it. And people like there are people of good standing, people who have been respected on both sides of the aisles, who are now championing this cause if there's been voter fraud, or that they compare what happened to the Bush versus Gore to now. Bush won by 500 votes in a state, in one state,
Right.
Florida. we're having a situation where, and recounts very rare. I mean, I guess there was a situation in Minnesota where those votes, made somebody else who would have lost. He won, but very rarely are there enough votes to change the outcome of the election. But people get to say cast these spurious allegations, and they take root. So we've killed truth. We don't even know what's true anymore. So I don't even know how you battle something like that.
So DL, you're right. And one of the ways to battle it, and I don't know if I have all the answers, but I'm gonna tell you how I approach this. I just tell the truth. And when
you're a lawyer, you can't tell the truth. That's impossible. No.
Yeah. Look, I just tell myths. I call it out. When I see nonsense taking place, I'm an unabashed advocate for the truth. And it's sometimes going to ruffle feathers, and sometimes you're going to lose friendships or acquaintances, but you tell the truth. Tell the truth, shame the devil.
For sure.
And at the end of the day, what we have to do is continue to tell the truth, push back on the nonsense, recognize that these people, they're speaking to a certain group of folks. And what we have to do is to try to communicate with them as well. Sometimes we'll be successful, sometimes we won't, but that doesn't remove from us the obligation that we have to continue to dispel myth and speak truth, especially to power.
So you're going to put your AG hat back on. You've been sued, right? Nevada's been sued, right?
Yeah, several times.
The results have been challenged, right?
Yes.
What is the basis of...
The results, the results themselves haven't been challenged as yet. It's been a lawsuit 4 times at every level of the game, and I can talk about that, but I want to hear what your question.
Then, and you're a professional, so if you got those allegations, you would take them seriously regardless of who they came from, right?
Absolutely.
And you would investigate them, right?
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm prosecuting somebody right now because of that.
Now, and you're prosecuting them. Was there evidence of voter fraud in that particular circumstance?
This was the last election cycle, and we had evidence that someone voted twice in 2 different states, including Nevada, and we are prosecuting over that.
Okay. Even if there were a level of voter fraud, is there enough to overturn in any situation, even that one person? Like how long you've been AG? How long?
2 years almost.
So you've had a voter. 2018, you had a voting cycle, right? So that's where this is from. Have you ever seen it to the degree? What would it have to look like for this case to have any merit at all? What would have had to have happened?
It would have to look like thousands, which is the reason why they came out with this bogus list of 3,000 folks, right? They're trying to pump up this number to make it look as though there are a sufficient amount of folks out there who participated in voter fraud. They say 3,000, and then they are able to say, extrapolate that and recognize that other folks can do it. Last election cycle, we had a recount. There was a state Senate race that was decided by 24 votes, I think it was. It was less than 30, I think it was 24. And there was a recount. And the person who initially won by 24 ended up winning by 24. That's because these recounts generally don't change the game. To be sure, in small elections where 2 or 3 people might affect the ultimate outcome, sure. But we have a 36,000 person lead right now for Mr. Biden in this place. There's no way you got 37,000 folks who participated in widespread voter fraud, and that's the key. Widespread is the adjective that's important to discuss here. There's always a one-off. Someone's always going to cheat, right? And voter fraud exists in that, at a minuscule level. And that's what's being prosecuted by my office right now. But in no way is there evidence that supports a contention that there's widespread voter fraud that's going to change the outcome of this election.
So you're sure that they're not 36,000 some odd votes that they found in trees and lakes and rivers and all of that the Trump administration is saying?
No. And so listen, here's another part of the process. We had vote by mail, as I've indicated. And because we were instituting vote by mail during COVID, so folks could exercise their important franchise to vote free from COVID, we have some unique protections in place, safeguards. You have signature verification. You have unique barcodes. And you have other redundancies that have taken us time for us to go through and count these ballots to ensure no voter fraud has occurred or taken place. And that's why I'm confident and secure in the election and the results that are going to be tallied and delivered to us. And I'm confident in the competency of all of our elections officials throughout the state, Democrat or Republican.
You wear a couple of hats. You are an elected official,
Yes, sir.
sworn to do a duty, and you're a black man and a father and a husband. And I think sometimes those can conflict. And I think that one of the pervasive thoughts in this election was that so many black people felt unsafe. I can't tell you how many people thought that they were going to be assaulted or attacked or harassed to vote. And you didn't see a lot of that in Nevada, at least, did you?
We did not. And I'm glad that you laid out all of the different hats I wear, right? If you look at my Twitter feed,
I have.
By design, I say I'm first a husband, then a father, and then the Attorney General for Nevada. I was born a black man, will die a black man, and I'm a black man right now in a unique intersection as being the top law enforcement officer in the state of Nevada. And for example, after George Floyd, I was able to draw on that experience and be able to speak to the importance of criminal justice and criminal justice reform issues. You are exactly right. People are afraid. I know my wife was, we were afraid. We were absolutely afraid. And again, that's why we were able to breathe a sigh of relief when the results started trickling in, and we were starting to see that Mr. Biden, we were going to have a change of leadership on top, where the person at the top isn't tweeting something that's going to have people stand back and stand by and prepare to potentially harm somebody.
You're the top law enforcement officer in Nevada, and that involves police. People do wrong things. People do illegal things. People do questionable things. Obviously, there has to be a penalty for that. How do we change the policing situation, or at least the conversation between communities of color and people? Like, I understand people always tell us how hard it is to be a police officer. No one ever tells us how hard it is to be a black man. We never get to take a uniform off. I never hear anybody saying that there is a predisposition that determines our outcome sometime. I'm not saying everybody has it, but there obviously are biases. And that there isn't the sympathy or even understanding on one side as there is on another. But you have to wear both hats. What changes the conversation? What do we do to move the conversation forward? What do we do to start? Because we have to be together. We all live in this country. So what do we do to make there be accountability and even a synergy that leads to a more fruitful and productive community? How do we do that?
Yeah, so in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's killing and after Breonna Taylor, I said that we are in a conversation, but this conversation should be over. If not over, it should be somewhere near the end, right? We should be beyond conversation, and we should be actually seeing tangible efforts and results of improved relationships between law enforcement and the communities that we serve, because I am the top law enforcement officer in the state. And that begins, in the first instance, in my mind, by acknowledging and accepting and admitting out loud that systemic racism exists. And it's not just the criminal justice system I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about in the educational system. I'm talking about in the economic system. I'm talking about in housing. And yes, I'm talking about in criminal justice. What we know, and those who deny this are those that you probably can't reach. But what we know is that at every level of the criminal justice system, there are discretions that are afforded to certain people that are not afforded to others. I'm living proof of that matter, right? At the arresting stage, there's discretion that's employed. You don't have to arrest everybody that you stop. Sometimes you could offer a warning. A traffic ticket is a prime example. And from the arresting stage, there's a prosecutorial discretion that says whether you're going to charge somebody, and if so, with what. And then you move to the next level in the criminal justice system, the justice system, the judicial system, where there's a discretion as to what you're going to sentence somebody to. And so all of these things are important when you look at the totality of circumstances to understand that we need to be passing laws and policies and implementing them and enforcing them. And on policing in particular, for example, a lot of police departments already have what we call a duty to intervene, where if you see something, say something. If a cop sees another cop doing something bad, they should do something about it. But
is there a punitive aspect to that? Because I know it's great to have in place, but what happens if they don't?
But you took the words right out of my mouth. That's the point I'm making. The policies exist. It is the enforcement of those policies and the transparent enforcement that is lacking oftentimes, where someone violates the policy, but there's no repercussion.
Right.
And at the end of the day, that removes any level of trust that was out there. And let me, if you would indulge me real quickly, I also have another philosophy about the types of trust that exists out there. I think there are at least 3 types of communities out there. The first community is that community which has the utmost trust in government and in law enforcement. You've seen it on Law and Order, where Olivia Benson is on the stand and she's testifying, and everybody in the jury box is shaking heads, right. Yes, I believe. And anything somebody else says is lying. She's the Bible and you're lying. That's the highest level of trust that exists out there, and some communities have that. There's another community, though, that has a certain level of trust that is less than that because of maybe what they've experienced with law enforcement, of what they've seen vicariously others experience. And so there's a diminished level of trust. And then there's a community out there, frankly, like I'm from, which had little to no trust out there, where sometimes we were grateful when law enforcement showed up to stop bad things from happening, but sometimes bad things happened when law enforcement showed up. And so in my mind, my job as a top law enforcement officer in the state is to augment trust where it already exists, is to restore it where it's been diminished, and it is to create it if it's never existed in the first place. And that begins by, again, transparency and fairness.
All right, Governor. I'll see you soon, man. I could have called you worse things. I could have said worse things.
Listen, I wanted to post your tape last time, but you ended by calling me governor, but didn't say that you were just playing the first time. So I couldn't even take that.
No.
Oh, wow.
No, you're going to be governor. You're going to be governor. Even though I have to illegally vote to do it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I prosecute that. I prosecute that.
Yes, he will.
And if you lose by one vote, you'll be mad at yourself. All right, there he is. Thank you, Attorney General Ford. Thank you, man. Keep doing good. How the kids doing? Everybody great? Everybody great?
Everybody's good, man.
Tell everybody I said hi, man. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Take care, Captain.